Story 1. You never expect a vacation to become a story you're too afraid to tell. I'd been planning my escape for months, a few days of peace and quiet at a little inn on the far end of town, where I could finally shut out the noise of everyday life. Instead, I found something waiting for me in the shadows, something I never want to meet again. I arrived at the inn just before midnight. The streets were empty, streetlights flickering as if they were afraid of what wandered through the dark. The woman at the front desk looked just as tired as I felt, her eyes darting up and down the long, empty hallway behind her. She handed me a heavy, old-fashioned key and muttered something about the heating not working on the third floor. I was too exhausted to care. My room was at the far end, number 310. The hallway was lined with ragged carpet and faded wallpaper, yellowed by time. Dragging my suitcase, I noticed how my footsteps echoed, too loud and out of place. The hall seemed longer than it should have been, the light bulbs growing dimmer as I approached my door. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of dust and something else I couldn't place. Metallic, almost. The lamp on the nightstand flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the uneven floor. My first thought was how quiet it all felt. The only sound my own breath and the soft creak of the bed when I sat down. I went to the bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth, but when I flicked the light switch, nothing happened. It stayed stubbornly dark. Sighing, I decided I'd deal with it in the morning. Back in the bedroom, I unpacked a few things, changed into pajamas, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. No signal, just empty bars in the corner of the screen. That was when I heard the water running in the bathroom. My heart stopped for a moment. I clearly remembered turning it off. I stood and walked slowly towards the door, listening carefully. The floor creaked under my feet. My hand trembled as I reached for the old, tarnished doorknob. Suddenly, the bathroom door swung open, and a man stepped out. He was tall, thin, clothes wet and clinging to his body, water dripping from his hair. His eyes were wide and wild, darting around the room before landing on me. In that moment, I felt as if I'd dropped suddenly into another world, a frozen moment of pure fear where every sense screamed at me to run. "What are you doing here?" I managed to say, my voice shaky. He didn't answer. He stared at me for a second longer, then took a slow, deliberate step closer. The way he moved was strange, almost as though his joints didn't quite bend right. The metallic smell was stronger now, and I realized it was coming from him, a mix of wet earth, rusty pipes, and something sour. 1,000 thoughts crashed through my head. Was he a guest? A thief? Someone much worse hiding here all along? My mind screamed at me to get out, but I was frozen, locked in place by terror. His hand slid behind his back, and I wondered if he was searching for a weapon. Suddenly, he spoke, a whisper, low and desperate. "You weren't supposed to come here." I stumbled backward, tripping over my suitcase, never taking my eyes off him. He glanced over his shoulder, as if expecting someone else to come out of the dark beyond the hall. "Nobody ever comes here at night," he muttered, more to himself than to me. I scrambled to my feet and lunged for the door, fumbling with the old lock. My hands shook so badly that I struggled to turn the key. The man's footsteps drew nearer, soft but relentless. I heard him breathing, quick and erratic, as if he was struggling to contain himself. My mind conjured all sorts of horrors. At the last moment, the lock turned. I yanked the door open and ran down the long, shadowy hallway, not daring to look back. The walls seemed to close in on me as I rushed past the flickering lights, my suitcase abandoned. The woman at the front desk wasn't there anymore. I burst out into the cold night and ran until my legs gave out, finally collapsing against a lamppost on the street outside. I never went back for my things, never told anyone what really happened. The police found nothing unusual in room 310, except my suitcase and some lingering drops of water by the bathroom door. Some nights, when I try to sleep, I see those wild eyes staring out at me from the darkness, hear his broken whisper echoing, "You weren't supposed to come here." Now, when I travel, I always double-check the room, and I never trust that the monsters stay outside, where they belong. Story 2. There are places that look beautiful and peaceful, but hide dangers beneath the surface. I learned this the hard way on what was supposed to be the perfect vacation. It wasn't darkness or monsters that scared me. It was the ocean, shining brightly under the sun. My friends and I had been excited for months about this trip to a small, quiet island. It was far from busy cities, far from noise, and full of clean white beaches and clear blue water. The locals warned us about strong currents and sharp coral, but we thought they were just stories to keep tourists careful. We felt safe, happy, and full of energy as we ran into the warm ocean. One afternoon, I swam far out from shore. I wanted to feel free and calm, away from everything. The water was cool and gentle as I floated on the surface. I decided to dive underwater to explore the sea floor. It was beautiful. Colorful shells and rocks were scattered below. Suddenly, I felt a sharp, burning pain on my ankle. It hurt so much that I gasped sharply and came up for air. The pain spread quickly, like fire burning through my leg. I looked down and saw blood spreading in the water around me. Something dark moved away fast. I yelled for help, but no one could hear me from so far out. I kicked wildly to get back to shore, but each movement made the pain worse. Swimming felt impossible, but I didn't want to drown. After what felt like forever, I finally reached the beach, my leg burning and numb. My friends saw me collapse and rushed over, confused and scared. The wound on my ankle was small but deep and already swelling and turning dark. None of us knew exactly what had hurt me, but we guessed it was something poisonous. The pain felt like acid under my skin and my foot was losing feeling. I grabbed my phone, hoping to call for help, but there was no signal, just empty bars flashing on the screen. The island was small, with a tiny clinic miles away. Our boat was anchored down the beach, too far to walk fast, and we had no way to get help quickly. My friends made a tourniquet with a towel, trying to slow the spread of the venom. They held me and talked calmly, but as hours passed, I felt weaker. My breath became hard, and my vision blurred. It was terrifying to realize how far away we were from any help. As the sun began to set, the beach grew colder and quieter. The sky turned a dark red, and strange shadows moved across the water's edge. I thought I heard footsteps on the sand behind us, but no one was there. My friends tried to comfort me, but I could see the fear in their faces. We were alone with the poison, the dark, and the unseen dangers in the ocean. Finally, when the tide allowed, we lifted me into the boat and started the slow trip back to the dock. The engine sputtered at first, and for a moment, I feared it would fail. Every second felt like a fight between life and death. The water below seemed endless and full of things waiting to pull me under. When we reached the dock, I barely remember being carried to the small clinic. The bright lights and voices around me were both confusing and frightening. The doctor looked alarmed and told us I was lucky. Many don't survive this kind of injury. Even now, long after the trip ended, I have nightmares. I wake with the burning pain in my leg and the feeling that something cold and dark is moving nearby. I dream of the empty beach and shining ocean, the kind that hides dangers too terrible to see. Vacations are supposed to be escapes. I thought I could leave my worries behind and find peace, but some places aren't safe, no matter how beautiful they seem. Some dangers are hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for the careless or unlucky. I will never forget that day on the island, the warm sunlight, the clear water, and the sudden sharp pain that changed everything. It taught me that no matter how far you go, you can't always escape danger. And sometimes, the ocean's calm beauty hides darkness you can't defeat alone. Story 3. There is a strange feeling when the forest suddenly becomes very quiet, so still that you can almost hear your own heartbeat. This was the exact feeling I had when I went hiking alone one day in a place far away from people. I never really believed stories about someone watching you in the woods, but what I experienced made me believe in it completely. It was a day I will never forget. The day I found fresh footprints that suddenly vanished, leaving me scared and confused. I wanted to get away from all the noise of the city and just be alone with nature. The forest was thick with tall trees, and the path I was walking on was narrow and covered in dry leaves. The air smelled like pine and wet earth, and for a long time the only sound was the crunch of my boots on the ground. After walking for a couple of hours, I stopped to drink some water. That's when I noticed the footprints. They were fresh, deep in the soft dirt beside the trail. They were larger than my own footprints, which told me that someone else had been here recently. My heart started to beat faster. I was supposed to be alone, but clearly I was not. Curious, I decided to follow the prints. They left the main trail and went into thicker bushes and across small streams. With every step, I felt like I wasn't alone. It felt like something was watching me. I got the strange feeling that eyes were following me from the shadows of the trees. Suddenly, the footprints stopped. Right in the middle of a small open space in the forest, there was no sign that the person had gone anywhere. Nothing was broken, and no grass was crushed. It was as if they had disappeared into thin air. That's when the forest grew completely silent. Not just normal quiet, but a heavy, strange silence, as if the whole world was holding its breath. No birds were singing, no wind was moving the leaves. It made the hairs on my neck stand up, and I felt very afraid. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" But the only reply was my own voice, swallowed quickly by the thick trees. I felt frozen for a moment, then turned back toward the trail, but the feeling of being watched didn't go away. Every shadow seemed like it was hiding someone. Every small sound made me jump. My heart beat faster, and I started walking faster, even running at times. I told myself it was just my imagination, but every crack of a twig or rustle of leaves made my fear grow. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees making a dark wall on all sides. After running for what seemed like a very long time, I finally found my way back to the narrow path I had left before. I thought I was safe now, but the feeling didn't leave me. The sunlight was warm, but it did nothing to stop the cold fear inside. When I reached my car, I locked the doors and sat shaking. Even then, I thought I saw shadows just outside the windows, moving between the trees. I wanted to yell or scream, but I was too scared my voice would get stuck. Later at home, I told my friends what happened. Most of them smiled and said I was probably tired or imagining things. But I know what I saw: the footprints, the silence, and that feeling like something was always watching me. It was real. Sometimes when I am alone at night, I swear I hear the same quiet watching and waiting. The forest keeps its secrets well, and some of those secrets don't want to be found. That day taught me that the woods are not always safe, even when they seem peaceful. And I will never forget the day the footprints disappeared, and I felt eyes on me from the dark. Story 4. There's something about old hotels that feels both magical and unsettling. Like the walls remember every secret, every sorrow, and every scream that ever happened inside. I never believed in ghosts or haunted places until I stayed in one during a vacation that turned my world upside down. What started as an exciting getaway quickly became a nightmare I can't forget. My friends and I booked a weekend at a historic hotel deep in the countryside. The building was beautiful, with tall, old windows, creaking wooden floors, and a heavy door that groaned when it opened. The locals whispered stories about the place: strange disappearances, voices heard in empty hallways, and lights flickering with no explanation. We laughed it off, thinking it would just add to the charm. The first night was quiet. We explored the grand lobby with its dusty chandeliers and worn carpets, took pictures by the fireplace, and settled into our rooms. Mine was at the end of a narrow hallway on the third floor, perfectly ordinary, or so I thought. Just after midnight, strange things began. It started with soft whispers drifting through the walls. At first, I thought it was my imagination, or maybe the wind outside, but the whispers grew clearer, sounding like faint voices calling my name. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, trying to listen. The lights above me flickered and dimmed, then brightened again, as if the room was breathing. Suddenly, the cold hit me like ice. My breath came out in foggy clouds, and I felt a presence, something watching, waiting. For a moment, the room seemed to shift. Shadows stretched longer, twisting strangely around the corners. I blinked and saw a figure, pale, barely visible, standing by my window. Its eyes were empty, dark holes staring straight at me. I froze, unable to scream or move. Then it vanished, as if swallowed by the night. The next morning, I tried brushing it off as a bad dream, but the hotel had other plans. Throughout the day, we heard footsteps on floors above us when no one was there, doors creaking open on their own, and glimpses of shadows moving just at the edge of sight. My friends, who once joked about ghosts, began looking uneasy. That night, the whispers returned, this time joined by cold drafts that seemed to circle the room. The lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness before snapping back. One by one, each of us experienced terrifying visions. Faces twisted in pain, hands reaching through walls, and silent screams echoing in our minds. I saw a woman in a tattered dress, her face pale and eyes full of sorrow, standing at the foot of my bed. She whispered, "Help me." None of us slept. The last night was the worst. The hotel seemed alive, groaning, creaking, almost breathing. The whispers turned into voices, urgent and desperate. Doors slammed, windows rattled, and the lights went completely out. We huddled together, hearts racing, unable to explain what was happening. Suddenly, the woman appeared again, this time much closer. Her face was twisted with anger, her eyes burning. She reached for me, and I felt a cold hand brush my skin. I screamed, breaking free and running down the hallway, not looking back until I burst out into the cold, fresh air outside. We left the hotel at first light, our laughter and fun gone, replaced by silence and dread. Even now, months later, I feel that cold touch sometimes. In quiet moments, I hear whispers, faint but clear, calling my name. The hotel's shadows have followed me home, reminding me that some places keep their secrets, and some secrets never let go. If you ever come across a place whispered about in fear, remember my story. Not all ghosts are trapped in buildings. Some are waiting for you. Story 5. People always say you're safe at a busy resort, surrounded by crowds and music and bright lights, but evil can find you anywhere, even when you feel protected. I learned this in the worst way, on what was supposed to be my most relaxing vacation. The trip started perfectly. Blue skies, palm trees, laughter echoing around the pool. I spent my first day loving the sun and the easy feeling of not having to worry about anything. Not until I noticed him, a man I hadn't seen before, watching me from a distance as I lounged by the water. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, someone just people watching. But as the hours went on, I caught him staring again and again, his gaze dark and unblinking. That evening, I tried to lose myself in the busy market nearby, blending into the happy crowds. But he was there too, standing under a street lamp, eyes fixed on me. My hands shook as I darted through the stalls, heart pounding louder with every step. When I left the market, I felt someone behind me. Footsteps, just slightly too close, echoing in the small streets that now seemed unnaturally empty. I walked faster, ducked into a cafe, and watched through the window. There he was, waiting outside, his stare colder now. Panic set in. I called the hotel and told them I was lost, desperate for an excuse to hide. I thought maybe I was just imagining it all, until I saw him move, starting to cross the street toward me. Every instinct screamed, "Run." I burst out the back of the cafe, racing through alleys, not caring where I ended up. I could hear his heavy footsteps behind me, desperate and angry. I zigzagged between buildings until the noise faded. Breathless, I hid behind a dumpster, praying he would give up. After what felt like hours, I returned to my hotel, shaking and terrified, locking the door behind me. I reported everything to the front desk, but no one had seen him. The rest of my vacation was spent in fear, looking over my shoulder, never feeling safe again. Now I know danger doesn't always wear a mask or hide in the night. Sometimes it stands in plain sight, finding you even in the brightest places. And sometimes, even the safest spots can become your worst nightmare. Story 6. Sometimes, a vacation can go wrong in ways you never expect. I always thought the worst thing that could happen while traveling was losing your luggage, missing a flight, or maybe getting sick in a foreign country. I never knew the real horror could come from someone you love, a family member changing so quickly you barely recognize them, and then finding yourself completely alone in a place you don't understand. It started off like any trip. My mother and I had been saving up for this, our first trip abroad together. We chose a charming city in Europe, with cobblestone streets, old stone bridges, and colorful markets. Everything felt magical. For the first few days we laughed, explored hidden alleys, and took pictures beside old fountains. It was supposed to be perfect. But on the third day, something changed in my mother. I woke up and found her pacing the small hotel room, mumbling to herself. Her eyes darted nervously, and she flinched at every sound outside the window. I tried to calm her, thinking maybe she was just jet-lagged or anxious. But the worry in her eyes wasn't normal. She refused to leave the room that morning, certain that people outside were waiting for her. She started to say things that didn't make sense, telling me the staff at the front desk were following us everywhere, whispering in a language only she could hear. I tried to show her messages and maps on my phone to help her feel safe, but she slapped the phone out of my hand and hissed, "They're watching you too." The air in the room grew tense, as if we were both trapped. When I suggested getting help or calling a doctor, she screamed, pushing me towards the door, accusing me of betraying her. My mother, the gentle person I grew up with, was gone, replaced by someone whose face I barely recognized. I ran into the hallway, searching for help, but I couldn't speak the local language well enough to explain what was wrong. When I hurried back, she was gone, vanished from the unlocked room. Panic crashed over me. I searched the city as the hours slipped away. The crowds felt endless. I shouted her name at street markets and busy intersections, eyes darting across faces hoping for a sign. I called the hotel, local police, even the embassy, but no one had seen her. As night fell, the streets became darker, and I felt more alone than ever. The city that seemed charming hours ago was now a twisting maze full of shadows and strangers. Everything sounded harsh and unfamiliar. The language, the laughter, even the ringing of distant church bells. Guilt gnawed at me. Had I failed her? Should I have noticed the signs earlier? I wandered for hours, heart aching, until my feet hurt and my voice was hoarse. I kept seeing quick flashes of her coat, her hair, always someone else, always a stranger. I spent that night in the hotel lobby, eyes wide open, jumping at every sound. Superstition crept in. What if she never returned? What if she was lost forever, or worse, taken by someone while she was confused and afraid? In the morning, the police called. They had found her miles away from the city, wandering barefoot and silent along a country road. When I saw her again, her clothes were dirty, and her eyes looked through me as if I were a stranger. She didn't speak at first, and I will never forget the look of fear and emptiness on her face. We spent the rest of the trip desperately trying to get her help and struggling to communicate in hospitals far from home. Every word was a battle, every day a test of my nerve and her willpower, just to hold on to a thread of sanity. I felt like the world was closing in, with no way out and no one to trust. Now, even back home, I catch myself checking every shadow, every movement. My mother eventually returned to herself, thanks to doctors and rest, but the memories haunt us both. We never talk about the trip. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I wake up and check if she is there, afraid she might leave again, or become someone I don't recognize. If I learned anything, it's that the unknown doesn't just live in old cities or dark corners, it can live inside those you trust the most. Travel isn't always about new places. Sometimes the real journey is finding your way back from a nightmare you never expected to face. For more stories like this, share and subscribe, Goofy Horror.